We arrive today on what for many of us is the last day of the Thanksgiving holiday. By today, the out-of-town family is heading home. Yes. The turkey has been reheated, turned to sandwiches, soup, or otherwise repurposed. The commercials for Black Friday are now rewritten as new ads for Cyber Monday, or just for holiday shopping in general. And we are prepared to step away from Thanksgiving and begin looking at the next frantic month of holidays, celebrations, and for many of us, stress, panic, anxiety, depression, and the prospect of many long months before spring arrives. But perhaps we owe Thanksgiving one more consideration, to look at the spirit within it. Thanksgiving is very much a peculiar holiday for a peculiar people, a celebration of our nation's unique history, its unique blending of peoples from around the world, and its unique sense of optimism. It is a secular holiday, which does not originate in any religious practice or align itself with a liturgical calendar, and yet it connects with deeply religious values. It is a holiday which asks us to consider ideas not of just one faith or of one nation, but of an almost universal nature. The messages within Thanksgiving, those of gratitude and selflessness, are values found in Western and Eastern faiths, modern sects, and ancient practices. The idea of pausing to give thanks, of recognizing all that we have and creating a sense of reverence about our lives, is one of the most ubiquitous spiritual practices found throughout the world. The sense that there is great good in selflessness, a good which comes close to godliness, is also shared across the world's many faiths. Gratitude and selflessness are both inward and outward movements of the human spirit, challenging us to look at our world as a gift and to live in the present, accepting the awe and wonder of existence itself, but also calling us to action on behalf of something greater than our own self-interest. As a starting point, I'd like to consider the idea of thankfulness or gratitude. The giving of thanks, the sense of gratitude, or even praise for the world in which we find ourselves is a component in one form or another of nearly every major religion on our planet. In many traditions, it is phrased as praise for the Creator, indebtedness for the gifts we as mortal beings can never repay, or acknowledgement that all we are and all we experience comes to us from a benevolent universe and a benevolent God. This is expressed very succinctly in the Psalms of the Hebrew Bible, most notably in Psalm 147, which reads, "Sing unto the Lord with thanksgiving, sing praise upon the harp to our God, who covers the heavens with clouds, who prepares rain for the earth, who makes grass grow upon the mountains." It is found again in the words of Paul, entreating in his letter to the Thessalonians to live lives of gratitude. "Rejoice evermore, pray without ceasing. In everything give thanks, for this is the will of God." This same sentiment, that all we are we owe to the divine, is also expressed frequently in Islam, best summarized in a common Islamic saying, "The first who will be summoned to paradise are those who have praised God in every circumstance." Praise and thanksgiving are at the heart of the Western Abrahamic religions, the core belief that human pride must be tempered by humility and gratitude to God, the creator of all things. In each of these traditions, there is a calling for humanity to live in praise and thanksgiving for the gifts of existence. In other faith traditions, the call to gratitude may not take the same form, but it remains an essential part of a balanced and righteous life. Buddhists, in the text of the Anguttara Nikaya, find this message with no reference to the divine, but as a value in human relations. "The unworthy man is ungrateful, forgetful of benefits done to him. This ingratitude, this forgetfulness, is congenial to mean people. But the worthy person is grateful and mindful of benefits done to him. This gratitude, this mindfulness, is congenial to the best people." And in the Hindu texts of the Satapatha Brahmana, we again find an entreaty for us to recognize our indebtedness to the universe when it says, "When a man is born, whoever he may be, there is born simultaneously a debt to the gods, to the sages, to the ancestors, and to men." There are similar statements of our indebtedness to our ancestors, to nature, to the divine, and to each other in Native American traditions, in Jainism, Taoism, and in the Shinto faith of Japan. Gratitude in all of these traditions is a stalwart against greed, pride, egotism, and self-centeredness. Living a life of gratitude is a pathway towards a healthy sense of self, dedication to others, and community with all things. We, as Unitarian Universalists, should feel right at home with this concept, as we cite among our core values a respect for the interdependent web of life, and a belief in the inherent dignity of all. We too are challenged to live lives of gratitude and to maintain a humility and recognition that all that we have is not our own, that regardless of our belief or questioning of the divine, our varied interpretations of the sacred, or our devotion to the mind, the heart, or the spirit, that we all share a debt to the universe, to those who came before us, and to each other. Regardless of the form it takes, whether direct praise for a specific God, a celebration of the earth and its gifts, or secular expressions of wonder at the universe, there is in humanity a recognition of some basic facts of our dependence upon a greater world and upon others, and this urges us to live in a state of gratitude. We acknowledge that we are infinitely small in the grand scheme of things, but that there is so much that we cannot control or harness, and yet our role as individuals is also a valuable one, capable of lightening the burden of others or crushing them beneath us. A calling towards gratitude is a challenge to appreciate our place in the universe and to act towards the earth and towards each other with humility and thankfulness. I'm being very careful to say that living in gratitude is a challenge. It is not as simple as taking one day a year to give thanks, or even to spend 30 days posting that which we are grateful for to our Facebook pages, though I do actually believe this is a worthwhile spiritual act, and doing so can make us more mindful. There is a real challenge to living in gratitude as a practice. There's a reason why those we associate most with the idea of humble lives and deep gratitude are religious figures such as Buddhist monks, Franciscan friars, or native shaman. Living in gratitude, if we take it seriously, does not mean simply a life of appreciation for what you have. It comes with responsibilities. It's too easy to simply say that we are thankful for all that we enjoy and then call it a day. Like the famous "God is great, God is good" grace, many of you know this one, I hope, which is most usually said at the dinner table when one is trying to rush the process and get to the food as quickly as possible. Gratitude, in half-hearted expression, is not truly committed or connected to a deeper spiritual awakening. If we're truly living lives of gratitude, we are called on to actively engage with our world and respect that which we have been provided. If we are grateful for the air, the water, and the earth, then can we justify ripping it asunder and pumping it full of toxic chemicals because $4 a gallon is just too much to pay for gas? Can we justify tar sands and oil tankers, sulfur plumes, or pesticide runoff if we really want to respect the earth we have been given? If we are truly respectful of the earth, we are willing to sacrifice some of our material wealth, economic growth, or personal comforts because we will not denigrate nature to serve man. If we are grateful for the plants and animals which provide us sustenance and the people who help bring this bounty to our tables, can we abide genetic manipulation, depletion of the soil's nutrients, animals living their entire lives in cages, or farm workers living under oppressive conditions for sub-minimum wage? Can we accept unfair trade, overfishing, and animal cruelty? Or must we insist on knowing more about where our food comes from and how it is produced? And if we are grateful for our freedom to speak, to pray, to gather, to vote, to dissent, or to live by our own beliefs, then we must not tolerate voter suppression, intimidation of journalists, militarized police forces, oppression of any kind, at home or in the world. We must strive to bring justice at home and peace to all, not limit our gratitude to thanking our troops for their service, but work towards a world that has little need for troops at all. We should lend our voices to those who are fighting tyranny and not impose one of our own to enhance our well-being at the expense of others. Gratitude is not a characteristic we can associate with empires or superpowers, but to the peacemakers. We should act as we wish others to act, not stoop to the level of those who use violence for political or personal gain. or condone barbarity in the name of belief. To be grateful, we must be caring. We must be tolerant. We must be willing to stand up for those who are being beaten down. A life of gratitude is also a life of activism, a life of conscious decisions, and a life of hard choices. It is with false humility that we would state that we live in gratitude if we do not actively seek for others to share in the same blessings we enjoy. Gratitude can be a shallow sentiment if it is not coupled with a passion to reach out to others. Thanks must be paired with giving, gratitude with selflessness. If one accepts life with gratitude, one must also give back to life with selflessness. We'll discuss this a little bit further in a few minutes, but having brought us, I think, away from the celebration of gratitude and towards its many obligations, which might seem a little heavy, I'd like us to return to the idea of thankfulness for just a moment as a deeply positive and affirming vision of life. Despite the challenges of living a grateful life, there is much upside as well. And for this, I'll not speak to you of the kingdom of heaven or of the rewards of a good cycle of karma. I'm going to pull something out of my humanist bag of tricks and let you know that scientific research has determined that people who live with a greater sense of gratitude and thankfulness benefit from that mindset. Dr. Michael McCullough of Southern Methodist University, Dr. Robert Edmonds of the University of California at Davis have conducted research on this very subject, and their findings seem to indicate that daily gratitude exercises, like the Facebook one I mentioned a minute ago, lead to higher levels of alertness, enthusiasm, determination, and energy, while simultaneously reducing depression and stress. So despite the challenges of walking the walk, there is good news for the grateful. What is even more interesting is that this impact has been shown to work independently of faith. That despite the fact that gratitude is present at the core of many of the world's religions, the impact of thankfulness as a daily practice is felt by all, regardless of their faith or lack thereof. So even the most questioning and agnostic among us can live better by counting our blessings and endeavoring to live, approaching our life with gratitude. The phrase I'd like to read to you, non nobis solum nati sumus. We are not born for ourselves alone. These are the words of Cicero, the first century Roman philosopher. We are not born for ourselves alone. If the message of gratitude is that we are not born of ourselves, then the message of selflessness must be this. We exist not for ourselves, but for others, as parts of a larger whole. We are not islands, or even planets, or universes unto ourselves. We are atoms combined to make a single greater living universe. We're not rogue planets flying alone through the void of space, dark and cold. We exist as stars within a galaxy of billions of stars, each pulling and pushing against each other, adding their individual lights to that of others, interacting with each other to form a brighter light in the sky. Our duty to each other, our need to work together not for our own sake, but for the sake of us all, has been known since the beginning of human societies. It is at the core of practically every expression of faith found on the planet, from concepts of karma and reincarnation, to acts and traditions of altruism and self-sacrifice, to the very concept of a God who would deliver his own being in the shape of a son to sacrifice himself for the sins of humanity. Every religious tradition begs us to live outside ourselves, outside the urge to put self above all else. And yet we find that despite the sage wisdom of the ages, selflessness is no easy task for us to accomplish. I look at our most recent election cycle as evidence of this. How many political ads did you see that called on us as voters to think of the common good? How many asked us to put aside our own personal biases, our needs, our concerns about our own standing, identity, or well-being, to act on behalf of the nation or the world as a whole? Quite frankly, I didn't see much of this at all. What I saw was a constant stream of messages telling us that it was time to be selfish, to vote for the candidate who was most like us, who would represent our interests against those of our neighbors, who would protect us from some mysterious other who was out to threaten our way of life. I saw race pitted against race, class pitted against class, men against women, young against old, religious against secular, rural against urban. basically neighbor against neighbor, and always with the same message. You should do what is best for you. Let the person who will help you earn more, keep more, get more. You matter more than they do. Selflessness basically does not sell well during a political campaign. Self-interest is a powerful drive in all of us. And yet we all recognize that pure self-interest, without sense of community, without working for others, is not really a very good path. It's not a sacred path or a healing one. It's not even a particularly humane path. To live within ourselves at the expense of others is at its deepest level the best definition we can have for evil. I'm not a big believer in seeing the world as a battle between good or evil, or between a benevolent God and a deceitful Satan. I find this to be very much a projection, a desire to cast on the universe our own familiar flaws as individual humans. When I look at the world beyond humanity, I just don't see good and evil at play. Tornadoes are not evil for existing. The destruction they bring is a byproduct of natural patterns of climate and temperature. Floods and volcanoes bear no malice towards the lives they take. The lion does not kill the gazelle out of spite, and the spider does not catch the fly because it disagrees with the fly's position on immigration policy. There are cycles of life and death in nature, and at times it can seem arbitrary and cruel, but in the life of the universe, there's no evidence of good and evil at war with each other. No, if you want to see that, if you want to see battles of good and evil, you must look to the human soul and to the societies formed by human drives. And when I look at human societies, or even individual acts, I see that at the heart of all which we would define as good or as evil, we find a struggle between selflessness and selfishness. All the great sins, the failings of an individual or a society can be defined at their core as acts of selfishness. The belief that what I need, or what we, my people, need, is more important than what you need, what they need. This is an all too common form of selfishness. The obsession that my way is right and yours is wrong, that my happiness can justify your misery, or that me and those like me are somehow more worthy than you and those like you. These are all forms of evil. Deception, fraud, theft, violence, murder, warfare, genocide. These are all fueled by a deep sense of love of the self to the exclusion of others. The liar protects himself at the expense of truth. The greedy justify their avarice as a form of self-protection. The thief and the murderer also see their needs, whether material or emotional, as superior to the needs of others. The terrorist justifies barbarism as self-preservation. The empire justifies its oppression as a defense of the needs of its privileged citizens. At the heart of each act of violence, deceit, and oppression, there is a kernel of self-interest that does not see the other as worthy of equal consideration. And when we consider love, the greatest good, what do we see? We see charity, empathy, compassion, sacrifice, heroism. These are the fruits of selflessness, of recognizing that we are not born of ourselves alone. The essence of love is the connection with something or someone beyond ourselves. If we view the world as a series of circles with ourself at the center, we each have a small ring of family and friends closest to us, a wider ring of those we know by name, a wider one still of those we consider to be like us, as Americans, as men or women, as ethnic enclaves, religious traditions, as liberals or conservatives. We have a circle of us, and outside it we have them. And there are wider rings further away from the star of ourselves. And just as the heat of the sun grows weaker as it reaches the outer orbits of Neptune or Pluto, the power of our love, our ability to be selfless, weakens as we expand outward to those we see as less and less like us, to strangers, to our perceived enemies, to humanity as a whole, to the animal kingdom, to the universe. It is so very hard for us to live our lives with a vision of the universe where all existence is within the closest rings of I and we. It's far easier to exclude rather than include, to shrink our circle of caring to only the closest rings, myself, my family, my people. But at the heart of human spiritual longing is a truth that the path to understanding, the path to holiness and happiness, is to expand the rings, to pull others into ourselves, not push them away. Human religious experience across our many cultures urges us to view the world with grateful eyes and act in it with selfless hands. The divine itself, if it can be defined as anything, is the recognition that all of existence is within us and part of us, to view everyone and everything as being within the innermost ring where the light of love is strongest. At the heart of nonviolence, you will find selflessness. At the heart of truthfulness, you will find it also. Where materialism falls aside, you can find it there. Whether we view our lives as circles of karmic energy, a balance of spiritual energies, a quest for eternal life, or a battle between competing urges towards good and evil, in all expressions of human spirituality, we are urged to set the self aside and live for something greater. We are asked to breathe in love and breathe out peace, to share, to respect each other, to put down the sword and lift up the olive branch. This is not a Christian message, not a Buddhist message, or a Sikh message. It is a human message, perhaps the most profound and spiritual message that we have understood since we first became self-aware, that we are better, safer, happier, and holier when we live for each other, and that we are weakened, endangered, saddened, and diminished when we live only for ourselves, rejecting our true selves, rejecting the potential to be more than an individual, more than a single bondless atom or a wandering rogue planet. The concept of selflessness can be interpreted very much as Buddhist teachings state as a giving up of the individual identity in favor of an understanding of the connectedness and oneness of all things. Western faiths, which entreat us to act with humility, altruism, and hospitality towards the stranger, make the same case. That in the other, in the stranger, we may be looking at the face of God. The positive power of religious practices across our globe is its ability to help us recognize that we are all atoms of a single greater being, that we are all stars within a living galaxy, that there is no you, no them, there is only we and only I, and that I is everything. To live in gratitude is to recognize that we live not by ourselves or of ourselves, but that we exist within something greater. And the call to act not as selfish individuals, but as a selfless community, we recognize as well that we live not for ourselves. To be grateful, we must be selfless, and in being selfless, we can find more to be grateful for.